Back in December, I was attending the Symphony Orchestra and Community Chorus holiday concert. It was beautiful music and a very fun experience. I know some of you were here, and some of our UU friends participated in the chorus and the orchestra. But at one point in the concert, as I was watching the conductor, I became mesmerized by the movement of his hands, down and in and out and up, in natural expression of the rhythm and the beauty of the music. I began to think about the importance of the downbeat in music and in conducting. The first beat of every measure is the downbeat. It provides the beginning of the rhythm, and without the regular downbeat, it would be pretty difficult for the musicians to keep track of where they are in the music, and it would certainly create challenges in playing together as a group. If musicians get lost, where do they go? They return and look for the downbeat. This month we have been exploring the topic of centeredness, and today I want to continue that exploration with a focus on the practice of returning to center. As the symphony conductor returned to the downbeat in every measure of the music and used his practiced movements to lead musicians in playing together, so we use our practice movements and rhythms to create and sustain our lives. Centering, being centered, is one of those practices. I don't know if you've had this experience, but it seems to me that this term, centered, centering, centeredness, has gained more popular usage in recent decades. Certainly, there is not one definition or meaning, let alone one point of view about centeredness. Human development researchers tell us that infants do not yet have a sense of a separate self. Their center, so to speak, resides with their caregiver. And over time, children begin to develop a sense of self, to experience and engage with their own body, their own senses, their thoughts, and eventually their emotions. As they experience themselves and their world, as they are mirrored by and interact with others, children grow into their awareness of themselves and the world around them. Now, at the most basic level, we all know what the word centered means. It means in the middle, like having a central axis point equidistant from its borders. If we draw a dot in the middle of the paper, we know what it means. We know where that dot is. It means the dot is in the center, in equidistance from the edges of the paper. And if we are physically centered in our body, we are balanced in our center of gravity and aware, perhaps, of our bodily sensations. If we are mentally and emotionally centered, we're in a neutral state of restful awareness, consciously aware of our thoughts and our emotions, but not in them, not pulled or triggered by them from this center, this observer point of view, we can notice, but not be engaged in any one thought or emotion, not letting the pull of energy draw us away from our centered awareness and point of attention. Centeredness in this way is a state of greater mindfulness, achieved by engaging all parts of ourselves to become fully present with full attention and equanimity. Centering and centeredness is a skill for which I'm very grateful that it's a skill, and it's cultivated over a lifetime. Sometimes when we talk about centered or centeredness, it's like, what are people talking about? Am I supposed to already know how to do that? Or what is that? Or understand it? But it's good to know that it's a skill and it's a practice. And it can improve our ability to stay level-headed, cope with stress, empathize with others, and listen more deeply. Centeredness provides the space in which we can choose how to respond rather than automatically reacting to a situation. It can provide a foundation from which we can sustain a rich inner life, positive connection with others, and intentional engagement in the world. Centeredness is a place of freedom, wholeness, connectedness, harmony, and on and on. It is a way of living life while we are aware that we're living our life, and leads us to living out of our true identity with awareness of our connectedness with all that is. Doesn't this sound fantastic? Who doesn't want freedom? Who doesn't want connectedness, harmony? Of course we want those. I want those. And yet, living is not a static experience. Music has more than downbeats. It has upbeats. Music that soars and expresses a full range of sound and rhythm. Think of all the types of music. R&B, my favorite, jazz, classical, country, rock, metal, hip-hop, K-pop, indie, all the diversity of sounds and styles and rhythms. And such is life, and such are we. We ebb and flow in rhythms that express the full range of our own human experience. Every sensation and emotion, thoughts that come and go and swirl around in our heads, sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, experiences of all kinds, some that are extraordinarily positive, some that are hard, some that bring us to grief. And thus, just as we need the downbeat in music to point us home, we need the practice of returning to center, of returning to the home of our true selves, to a still point inside that sits and holds all of our experiences, all of ourselves, with compassion, acceptance, and love. Now, if you want to know how my centering practice is going, just ask me whether I am always centered at work, especially during my daily work meetings, or when someone is really upset with me, or when I make a mistake. No, we're all pulled off center. We're all triggered by people, events, inner thoughts of our past or potential future. And this is why centering is a practice. It's a skill that we develop over time, not so different from practicing any skill. If we are learning piano, we practice our scales so that we can gain dexterity and ability to play in an increasingly more complex pieces of music. If we want to become a master archer, we practice every aspect of our craft, how we stand, where we place our bow, how we focus our line of sight toward the target. Every movement that we make comes over time to become natural, and soon we gain mastery over our skill. But centering is not a competition. We are not competing with one another to see who can be the most centered person, nor is it about becoming a perfectly centered person, whatever that might mean. And this is perhaps why Buddhists use the term beginner's mind, because we don't really ever arrive at some imagined perfect way of being. Rather, we engage with each present moment as if for the first time, with our practiced and yet feeble attempts to be fully present, engaged, and centered. Because each present moment is a new moment of experience, and we show up as a new person with our awareness, our attention, our intention the best we can. So what can cause us to move away from our center? What happens when I am triggered by what is said in my work meeting? Well, let me introduce you to my can. This is my container. I was going to get an old Folgers coffee can because it seemed like the perfect thing, but then I'm happy to say somebody donated this to the thrift sale, and I found it there, 50 cents. So thank you, whoever that was. But this is my container, and it represents my past. In it are the beliefs, values, experience of my past, the culture and worldview in which I was raised, the religion of my upbringing, the schools of which I was a part, all the life rules, expectations, preconditioned notions of how things should be, the definitions of what makes a good person, a good life, everything that was part of my life context and preparation. This container represents my conditioned self. And it certainly has many, many, millions of beautiful and wonderful experiences and moments in it, and many wise insights that came from my past. All the way from, if you speed while driving, you'll have to pay about $300. I'm sure that never really happened. All the way to love your neighbor as yourself. So it contains all the good, all the beautiful, and all the things maybe we don't believe anymore, or we don't hold. But this is my past. And it contains the many hidden and not so hidden underlying beliefs and messages, values, and experiences that formed me in ways that created both beautiful things and deep fear and anger. And that past told me that men are the authority, the head of the house, and the religious, social, and political leaders. That past also formed my psyche to believe I didn't quite matter, that nurturing support was not always available, or this is how a woman is to act or be. So what happens when I am in a meeting where a male authority is making decisions for the team or for me, or when I can't seem to get what I need? Of course, I'm pulled off center right in a split second, right back into my past experience, triggered from a wound that is almost, but not quite completely healed. And this is the experience of all of us. When the energy from the past or fears of the future pull us away from our center. And this is why we need to offer compassion to ourselves and to each other. to hold each other gently as we heal, and as we practice returning again and again, knowing there is nothing wrong with us when we are decentered. That this is what the human experience entails. And this is why Mark Nepo, from our reading this morning, says, perhaps the noblest private act is the unheralded effort to return, to open our hearts once they're closed, to open our souls once they've shied away, to soften our minds once they've been hardened by the storms of our day. And this is why Scott Taylor wrote, as we lit our chalice this morning, pulled in many directions by the demands of our days, we light this chalice to remind us of the still point deep inside, to remember the shelter of each other, to illuminate the faces of friends and sacred companions, recalling that we find our way through the willingness to take each other's hand. And maybe this is why the beautiful words of Neil Young, as he sang Heart of Gold, are so poignant. I want to live. I want to give. I've been a miner for a heart of gold. I'm getting old. It keeps me searching for a heart of gold. We search. We search for love, for ourselves, for that heart of gold inside that is the center of our very self, that part of us that is interconnected with all that is, with more than ourselves, with the very heart of love at the center of life. So friends, in the center of our being, each and every one and all that is a place of light, is a heart of gold. It's a light that shines out into our world, a place of love and compassion, a place of connection and wholeness. May we keep searching and keep practicing and keep connecting with our center, individually and together. Let's keep returning to that heart of gold.